Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back on the second dev server for the next major updates in War Thunder, and it's time to have a look at a new MBT that is coming to the Israelis. This is the Merkava Mk.4B, and it's going to be the kind of crown of the Israeli tech tree, at least at the moment. It's at 10.3 and it's at rank 7, the only rank 7 Israeli ground vehicle that exists, and it comes after the two other Merkavas that are sat in the tech tree. Now remember, there is a bunch of other Merkavas which are planned or soon TM when it comes to War Thunder, so they'll probably be joining the Mk.4B, but at the moment, this one, at least on the dev server, is all alone. The massive upgrade when it comes to the Mark II and the Mark I is the turret on this machine, and also its engine, which is pretty nice. It's pretty much an upgrade all around when it comes to the vehicle. If you have a look at the armor itself doesn't really tell a perfect story about the vehicle itself. You know, you have some very weak armor. If you just saw this armor, you'd be like, well, this is terrible, you know, only 30 millimeters all over the place. And even when you turn off show external armor, there's nothing really under it, which just seems super weird, right? There's 50 millimeters back here, but the armor right now is not properly modeled on this thing at all. And the only way to really see its actual protection is through the protection analysis stuff. So to give you an idea, if we use a rank 7 vehicle, let's have a look at Germany with the DM53, which is an incredibly powerful round, and at 11.3, where this thing is at 10.3, or at least 11.0, sorry, then you can see that through the upper glacis, it can go through. You know, it's still got 500 millimeters of protection in areas and 400 in others, and also the low glacis is pretty, you know, weak, but at the same time, unless you're like angled under it, you know, you're not going to do too much damage to the machine. You're only really going to, you know, get through it if you're really, really lucky. But if you shoot it like here in the upper glacis, generally what's going to go on is the engine is going to eat some of the rounds, or the transmission is going to eat some of the rounds, and it's not going to be able to go through and hit everybody in the back. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on where the shot is angled in from. But you can see here it takes out the bridge, or the transmission and the engine, but doesn't do anything else. And then when it comes to the turret is really, really well armored. So you're basically looking at 800 to 900 millimeters on the cheeks. So shooting there is going to be kind of useless. You can technically get it through the slit and destroy the loader behind, which is kind of interesting. But apart from that, it's going to be super hard penning this turret. The main areas you're going to shoot this thing is basically where you shoot all of these high tier MBTs. You can go for the turret ring if you want. It's not the easiest shot, but you can do it. And then you can go through the top of the breach. That's one which everybody likes doing. So you can breach this thing and take it out and maybe hit the ammo in the back. Or what you can do is you can go through the driver. And what this does is it kills the engine, the driver, and also the guy behind, and maybe the ammo in the back if somebody holds it. But the turret itself is very strong for a 10.3 vehicle. And remember, it's not always going to be facing stuff like DM53. It's going to be facing slightly worse rounds. The side armor is pretty naff. It's still, you know, 400 to 500, but against, you know, the APF STS it's going to be facing, that's not really going to do too much. And with all the ammo in the back, that's a little bit rough for it. Another thing to note as well is it does have this like ammo piece in the back here, and I don't know if this is attached to a blowout panel. I'm guessing it is attached to a blowout panel, like it will go upwards here instead of into the crew compartment. Because of the way that it's set up. I haven't done any testing on it, and also when we tested blowout panels last time on dev servers, it kind of gave us the wrong results because they weren't fully modeled yet. So we're going to have to see if that's the case on this one or not, but I'm pretty sure it should be a blowout panel. But the main thing to understand is the turret is very strong. The gun breech is weak as usual, and the upper glacis and the lower glacis is quite weak, but at the same time, your rounds can get stuck on these areas, which are quite nice for the machine. So survivability is a lot higher than a lot more MBTs that we have around these BRs compared to, you know, compared to some which are higher and lower. And another thing that it does have, which is great for its survivability, is the smoke grenades. So it gets 30 smoke grenade launchers. So these are the ones which are launched out of this thing here. Then it also gets 12 66mm smoke grenades over here and here, which you unlock. So even in a stock configuration, this thing has access to 30 smoke grenades, which come out the top of it right here. And also it gets access to two 7.62mm, one right here and the other here. Then also a 50 cal, which is mounted above the main gun, which is quite nice. So it means that it will be able to fire directly where the gun is looking as well. When it comes to the other areas of the machine, so its engine is really interesting. So being a Merkava, it's in the front of it, and it's a 1500 horsepower engine, so standard compared to a lot of the other MBTs that are running around right now. And at the same time, it has the radiator and transmission right on top of it. And you can see there's something which is pretty cool about this Merkava. It can go as fast forward as it can backwards. And this basically means that if you need to get out of trouble as quick as you got into it, you are able to. It has a very similar system to what the Type 10 has, and not many other high-tier MBTs actually have something like this. It's very more noticeable on stuff like the EVGA, for example, which I think is pretty cool. Also, at the same time, it has the extra ammo in the back, just like all the other Merkavas, and the radio in the back of the turret as well. The third point, I suppose, so the mobility is pretty good on this thing. The armor in certain areas is very good on this thing. The survivability is awesome in this thing. The other area to look at is, of course, the ammunition and what it can fire. So this has a 120mm IMI MG251 cannon. It seems like it's slightly different to some of the other ones when it comes to its general shape. If you compare it to like the Galbatash, you can see it's a lot shorter when it comes to the barrel, even though it's a 120mm. But the interesting thing is it only gets one APF SDS. And this is kind of annoying. As somebody who has nearly spaded the M1A1, which also only gets one APF SDS, they tend to put it at rank 3. And putting it at rank 3 basically means that you have to use Heat FS until you get there. And it can be a real pain. Basically, in the M1A1, by the time I got to its APF SDS, and remember, that vehicle is not an end-of-the-line vehicle. It is one which is doesn't have those issues like the Merkava Mk.4 has with the higher RP costs for modifications. I was minus 25 in KD and about a 45% win rate with the M1A1 until I got the APF SDS. And now with the APF SDS, I've turned it around and I'm now plus 45 or plus 50 in the machine with about a 60% win rate. That's how much one modification on a machine can make a difference. And on the Merkava Mk.4B, this M322 shell is really going to make a difference because of that fact. It pens 589, 497, 340mm, which is completely fine for an APF SDS at 10.3. This will be able to do everything that you need it to do. It also has access to an LWSLR, which is really nice, and also some thermals, which I believe are Gen 1 on the vehicle itself. So overall, you know, it has a nice round. It's just going to be an absolute pain getting to it. It does also get HETF, so nobody will ever use that, apart from maybe against helicopters every so often, and also the Heat FS to be able to go in. The Mk.4B as a general vehicle is looking pretty nice right now. You know, it's got a lot of factors to make it really kind of desirable, I suppose is probably the word for it. But one of the main issues that it has, and this is just one of the problems of being in its position right now, is it doesn't have access to a lineup. It pretty much only has it, and then maybe you can bring along some aviation stuff, and maybe you can bring along, you know, a few of the lower tier MBTs. You can see it's got Gen 1 thermals right here. But you're not going to be able to have a full lineup with this thing, at least when it starts. Maybe once other Mark IVs start getting added, then it will have a full lineup and we won't have to worry about those issues. But at least at the moment, it pretty much means you're going to have to solo carry in this thing, maybe with the addition of an airplane. Because even the helicopter, the P-10, which is, you know, being added for Israel, that thing's a 10-7. So you can't run it with this thing if you want the MBT to be the top BR of your lineup, which generally that's what you want for the vehicle. So the actual vehicle itself is looking fantastic, especially if you like the Merkavas, you know, the ones which are added to the American tech tree. I've personally found them incredibly fun. This one is just looking like an upgrade of them, and therefore will be incredibly nice to play. But it just doesn't have enough backup at the moment to make it justifiable. When you think about other nations, especially at 10-3, 10-7, 10-0, 11-0, and you look at their lineups and you compare it to this one singular vehicle, it's going to be very hard for people, even with backups, to be able to justify using stuff like this and being very combat effective in it. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who will do it, and I'm sure they'll do it with great success, because there are many people in War Thunder who are fantastic players. But at least for me, I'm not one of those people. I'm probably going to struggle a little bit with an only one machine lineup. And also at the same time, even if you are a wonder god when it comes to War Thunder, you're going to have those games where you just get AGM'd by helicopters, or you know, you get hit by an aircraft, or maybe you get donked by artillery, or whatever happens, you're going to have a bit of a rough time. And in lineups where you only have one vehicle, that pretty much means that you're not going to be able to do anything. You're just going to be kind of sat there and, you know, not having any fun really at all. So that is definitely a problem when it comes to the vehicle. I'm sure it'll be fine eventually when other Merkavas and other things get added to the Israeli tech tree, but at the moment this is not a one-man army. This is definitely not a one-man band. It needs a little bit more support than what it's getting at the moment. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Merciless Reaper, Jerry Provolt, Mega Dino King, Professor X1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Moxie, B. Young, and Derek R. Barine, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.